This is a primer video for when we get to this part of the story, so you know what I'm talking about. There are moments where Barry seems to go off radar. That is, his truck data appears to stop recording for sometimes hours at a time. So let's start there. What we're looking at here is the map data provided by the Defence for Thursday the 7th of May. And they've given us quite a bit of data. We've got quite a bit of bobcat activity in town. We have vehicle data, vehicle log, odometer, parking light events, driver door events, and we've got some phone data on here as well. To sort of make this a little more obvious as to what we're looking at, I have removed some data, and just so that you can see what kind of data I've removed, just to make the point of what this video is about. So you can see here that, there's 40 odd GPS pings from the bobcat, and by putting them all on the map at once, we get confused as to what's where. And so what I've done is I've basically recorded a startup event, a shutdown event, and none of the stuff in between that show, like you'll see he was doing a lot of startup and shutdown there and a lot of startup and shutdown there. So basically, the first startup, the last startup for that group, or so on. So I narrowed down the data, but what seems to me to be obvious is this car data. And let's jump into the animation so we can have a look at that. So in this little segment, this is where I plugged in some of the coordinates of interest into Google Earth Studio, and this gives us like an animation, and it's very time consuming and difficult to do. Every single frame in the entire animation has to be set up. So this is not something I want to do for every bit of data that we look at, but I will do it for particular points that I want to make, like this one for example. So we can see here that at 6:47 a.m. we have some vehicle recording activity, the log, the doors, the odometer reading. A few different things happen at 6:47. And then at 7:03, Barry puts his phone into airplane mode. And then he drops off the map for 9 minutes. He turns up at the job site at 7:42 a.m. This is where we see the bobcat first starts up. And then at 9:44 a.m, he ends up shutting it down. And then he's off radar for 1 hour and 25 minutes. And this is where I think it gives the impression that he's disabling the telematics on his truck and also putting his phone into airplane mode, etc. So he turns back up at 11 a.m, where we see the bobcat start up. And he does a bit of work until he shuts it down again at 11:37 a.m. And then he does this really weird shift. He loads up the bobcat onto his trailer, which has got to take at least, half an hour because she's got to tie it down and everything. And then he scoots all the way over here and runs the bobcat for 6 minutes. Now, this isn't really all that close to where the police dug up one of his job sites on the beach area. This is in town. This is at someone's house on the corner here. And then he packs the bobcat up and he goes all the way back to Tailwinds and continues working there until 3:23 p.m. And then from there we get his car starts registering some activity over here. And then pops up at Maysville 1.5 hours later. Couple of different pings from the car, and then he's off radar until Friday. Now, there is an argument that can be made that Barry somehow knows how to disable his Ford F350 telematics control unit, or TCU. So let's look into this theory. The first question I would ask is, why would he disable the TCU on Thursday, here in what we were just looking at, which is arguably a normal work day, and then leave it on when he's allegedly, murdering his wife and disposing of her body? And so, if you're going to commit a premeditated crime, then you would probably turn off your truck telematics, assuming, of course, that you know how to do that. This led me into looking into the truck telematics. And what we find is that the 2013 model of the F350 didn't actually ship with Wi-Fi hardware, or the modem. This feature was made available to owners in mid-2018 if they wanted connectivity. And so firstly, you would probably want to know, why would Barry want connectivity? So this is the first thing I wanted to go into. What would the connectivity provide Barry that he might want? I mean, obviously he doesn't want to be tracked because he's turning his phone on and off airplane mode. So what in the connectivity module would Barry actually want? The first thing we find out is that to get the connectivity model, he has to actually buy it from Ford and install it in his vehicle. So let's have a look at, first of all, what the vehicle looks like before, and then what the unit looks like and how that's installed and what it might provide that he might want if he was to choose to go with connectivity aftermarket. This article here from the Ford Media Center describes the unit, how it's plugged in, and some details when it became available, and so on. And so I just wanted to read through basically the point of the exercise and which models it affects. It says, using a simple device that plugs into the OBD2 port below the steering wheel, the new Ford Pass SmartLink experience gives owners of 2010 to 2017 model year Ford vehicles those connectivity features normally available only on newer vehicles equipped with modems. And just to show you what that looks like, so this unit here, number 4, this is behind the dash, and this is the standard unit that comes with the vehicle. All these extra pieces are additional pieces. If you wanted to install them, you could avoid getting all of those pieces and just buy this extra little bit from Ford themselves, which plugs in under the steering wheel somewhere. So this is basically what we're looking at. The TCU unit, number 4, as you can see, that's here, number 4. That is in the 2013 model. All this extra stuff for the infotainment and extra connectivity is not in the 2013 models. And so this is what the dash will look like in a 2013 model.
Left-hand side of your steering wheel, of course, is your cruise control and your menu controls. If you go on up to the top here, and we can get it to focus for you, you can scroll through a bunch of different features, trips, kilometers. It's really fuzzy. I'm sorry, the camera doesn't like the cold very much. On the right-hand side of your steering wheel, you have your cruise control and your hands-free Bluetooth phone, of course. You got your tow haul button up here with the manual going through your gears on your shifter. Four-wheel drive with your locking differential. And as you come on over, you can see your interior climate controls, your 6-pack CD changer with your media, as well as your stereo.
Now, one theory could be that Barry purchased the vehicle with this extra module already installed. But if you didn't, this is what it would look like with just the standard TCU that ships with that vehicle. And next we'll have a look at how this module would be installed, whether he did it himself or purchased it that way as a second-hand vehicle.
Today, what I want to show you guys is how easy it can be to upgrade from the standard CD player radio all the way up to the premium Ford navigation radio. The installation is just requires replacing the head unit here. You can replace a few other little parts, add an amplifier, plug and play, and you'll be up and rolling. What we do here at infotainment.com is we'll send you a pre-programmed Ford navigation radio that we'll install on this exact slot here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to install this cable here. This is basically how it looks. You have a female and a male, which will plug in the back of the radio. It'll route to your sync module connector, and the red will be pinned into 12, and the blue wire will be pinned into 13. And the Super Duty truck, as I mentioned, it's going to be right back here on the right A-pillar. One of the biggest reasons why we're doing the upgrade is for GPS navigation. So you'll notice the GPS navigation map, destination. It has all the traditional features a nav system would have, where you can look, by putting your favorite destinations in. Your standard route by putting addresses in your address book, or looking up through a street address or point of interest. You'll be able to edit your route through the Edit Route soft key. You also can set all your preferences through this navigation hard key. Route preferences, maps, if you want it in 2D, 3D maps, heading north. All sorts of different preferences here you can fool around with once you get it installed. Sirius Travel Link is a great feature that you can get. It's an additional subscription through Sirius Satellite Radio, where it will give you sports scores, weather reports, local fuel prices, and the navigation will direct you right to those places. You'll be able to connect your phone if you don't already have one connected through the phone hard key here. And then you could set that all up through here as well.
Hopefully that last 5 minutes wasn't too difficult to sit through. But the point of showing you this is to demonstrate that there are variables that we don't know. For example, how much data was being stored by the truck depends on which system Barry was using. The standard telematics system, shipped with the vehicle, will only store small amounts of data. However, the installable module that we just saw links up to your Verizon account and is capable of storing much larger amounts of data depending on how much space you purchase. In the case of the data being stored physically on the truck itself, there are other variabilities and limitations which will affect a lot of things. For example, whether or not doors opening and closing or parking lights coming on and off are a higher or lower priority to other events such as odometer reading and safety events. But in the case of the data being stored in the cloud, then obviously there's a much wider range of data that can be stored because there's more room to store it. There's also environmental factors between the vehicle and the satellite for that data to arrive at the cloud. So what we have here is 2 unknown variables, which system, and 2 sets of limitations attached to each type of system. On top of that, to assume that Barry was able to disable either types of modules, he still had to go in through the dashboard in the case of the installable module, or through the side wall to disable the TCU itself. And this brings us back to the first question. If he's going to go to that much effort on a normal workday, why wouldn't he go to the same effort the day he was allegedly doing something to Suzanne? There is one other variable that we don't know, and we refer to the defendant's exhibit from the preliminary hearing to determine this last variable. Now, if we scroll through page 3, just as an example, this is just one data table that we know they have. We can see here down the left, this shows us the number of lines or rows of records that they have pulled. In this particular example, we're only getting from row 3941 through to row 3955. But the fact that this says 3,955 records just in this one table associated with the phone data tends to indicate that there are thousands of records that we are not seeing. More than 4,000 records missing just from this data set alone. So, how many are missing from the vehicle telematics? Because when we have a closer look at that, what they were primarily interested in the vehicle telematics was this specific period where they wrote these notes. This specific period. So, is Barry actually dropping off the radar? Or have the defense just not included some of those records? And just to show you the difference here, we're not seeing row numbers next to this data. And so what this tells us is this is a report produced from an original data set, a larger data set. It's showing us text messages in the same report format as call log entries and the vehicle telematics. But you can see that the vehicle telematics is in the same report format as the call log entries from his phone. And so that's how we know that this data set is drawn from another data set which originally looked very similar to this phone data, as in a spreadsheet that told us how many rows were in the full data set. So essentially, just to wrap up, without knowing the actual system that the forensic team queried to pull the data, we don't really know if there are any errors in doors opening and closing data, for example, and without the prosecution showing us how much data they collected in spreadsheet format, because let's face it, we can't rely on the defence, they can't even do math, and they're only interested in presenting a specific story to get Barry off the hook. So we would need to see the prosecution's full data set in order to draw any conclusions that Barry was in fact disabling his telematics system. So when this topic comes up in the series, I won't go into this much detail to describe it to you. I'll just refer you back to this video so that you can get the detail from this video.